Lord, I thank you for this passage. I thank you for your word. I thank you that we can hear it from you. And I just pray that studying and looking to this over the past few weeks, that you would just be the words that would come from me to these people, that they would hear it and they would know it. I thank you. Amen. Have any of you ever been scared? Obviously, that's a rhetorical question, because all of us have been scared or scared of something before. See, a few weeks ago, I found a dead tarantula sitting by the piano back here, and I saw it, and I had a hard time throwing it in the trash. And it had nothing to do with having to pick it up and throw it in the trash. It was that I wanted to take it and go put it on Cameron's desk. Now, I had permission to tell you this beforehand, but to put it lightly, Cameron is not a fan of tarantulas, but even more so, it's cockroaches. And whenever we have the guy that comes and sprays for bugs, that's when we find a lot of them, and I find them quite often, and I always want to just take them and set them on his desk, because I know this fear. And it's not that it's the fear of seeing them, it's the fear that Cameron might step on it and feel that crunch under his feet and juices come out of it. And I know Cameron right now is trying very hard not to squirm in his seat. So it's this knowledge of this fear that makes me want to go pick it up, put it on his desk, and wait for him to come in his office and see how high he jumps. Meanwhile, I'm rolling on the floor laughing like crazy. I haven't taken the opportunity to do this yet, and I don't know if I will, because I just know how much it would bother Cameron and what he would do in return to me. Another thing I love to do is at home when I hear my kids coming, I like hiding around the corner and screaming boo at them and seeing how high they jump. And I just quickly grab them and hold them tight so they know that I'm just playing with them and having fun with them. But the best though is our 2-year-old, who is just scared for just half a second, and you just see this great big smile on his face because he just loves me doing that. And we both just give each other just this great big huge hug. So that's one kind of fear. Another is public speaking. Some people really hate doing this, and as you can see, my hands are shaking a little bit because it's not natural for me to want to do this. Another is the fear of when you're in immediate danger. Back home in Canada, where we are from, and where Julie and I lived the first 8 years of our marriage, we have mountains. And we have hills that would make the hill country look like speed bumps. There's, on those mountains, there's a lot of different roads, and some of them, they're quite scenic roads and really nice to drive on. One of those mountains is called Sumas Mountain. And there's we go on those drives every once in a while just for fun as a family, just to get out of the house. And someone told me one time there's a road down the backside of the mountain. And I thought, hey, why don't I go and try and find this road? I knew about where it was. And so we went, and I found it quite quickly, and we started going down this road. I learned very soon there's a reason that people don't take this road. It's an old logging road made of gravel, and it was the steepest decline of a road that I've ever been on in my life. Julie, sitting beside me in the passenger seat, was quite terrified and quite upset very soon after we got onto this road. And me, myself, I'm a very calm person, sometimes to a flaw, and this is one of the times that it was needed because of how Julie was. We were going quite slowly down this road because it was so steep, but even when I felt when we were stopped, it felt like we were still sliding down this hill. On the switchbacks, going back and forth, it was still so steep, it felt like sometimes our van might roll over. I knew it wouldn't, but that's just how it felt. At that time, we also didn't have a cell phone, so if we did go careening off this cliff, and somehow we survived, there would be no way to contact anybody and let them know where we are so that we could be rescued. We obviously made it to the bottom of the hill fine, and our kids sitting in the back had no idea what's going on and just enjoying the ride. But I was still full of fear, even though I was calm. There's also the fear of the unknown, or of your imagination. Right now, someone could, on the drive home from church, get in a car accident. It's happened in our country, and thankfully it hasn't happened in here, but someone could walk through those back doors with a gun and start shooting. It's a scary thought to think that could happen. So do we just sit at home in our closet and hide? No, because lo and behold, there's some mold growing in the corner of the closet. We breathe it in and we die in our closet. So what does all this talk about fear have to do with this passage? And Jesus starts right off by saying, do not let your heart be troubled. Why is he saying this? Well, we have to look back. Jesus, at the chapter before, chapter 13, Jesus invites all the disciples together and they have, Jesus knows, their last meal together. The disciples don't know that. First thing, after they sit down for the meal, Jesus says, just letting you know, one of you is going to betray me. Disciples are probably thinking like, what? We've been with you for 3 years. We're not going to betray you. And Jesus goes on to say, I'm going to take this bread, I'm going to dip it in the juice and give it to the one who's going to betray me. He does that. And he gives it straight to Judas and then tells Judas, okay, go do what you need to do. The disciples are in so much denial that someone is going to betray them. They don't even believe that Judas is going to betray Jesus. Then he hits him with another thing. He says, okay, I'm leaving. And I'm thinking Peter's going, good, you just told us someone's going to deny you. You better get out of here while you have the chance. And Peter also asks, nudges John after Jesus says, nudges and wondering who that person is that's going to deny him, and that's when Jesus tells him it's Judas. But Jesus also says then, yeah, I'm leaving, but you can't follow me. And Peter says, hey, you can tell me where you're going. I will follow you. I can go where you're going. I would die for you. And like Matt said last week, and about Peter, it's a lot about us. It's a lot easier to be tough and say you're going to do stuff when you're in the comfort of your own house and with the door locked. But like Peter, he says things, like myself, Peter says things before he thinks and says it too quickly. And Jesus quickly tells him, you're going to die for me, and by the morning you're going to deny me 3 times. And I'm sure the disciples were also thinking then, Peter, he's the leader kind of amongst us disciples. If he's going to deny Jesus, what are we going to do? And I don't know if the disciples are remembering this at this time, but back in Matthew 10, Jesus sends out the disciples by themselves to go heal the sick and cast out demons. And he tells them to go proclaim the message, the kingdom of heaven has come near. The problem is that Jesus also told them in verse 17, be on your guard, you will be handed over to the local councils and be flogged in the synagogue. And in verse 21, he says, brother will betray brother to death, father his child, children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. So with all this, I think it would be pretty fair to say the disciples would be fearful or have troubled hearts. Now Jesus is not making a request of the disciples, but commanding them to not let their heart be troubled. Okay, that's nice and all, but with all this bad news, how is that possible? And Jesus gets right to it in the same verse. And he says, you believe in God, believe also in me. He reminds them to stop looking at their feelings, which are constantly changing, but to look at the reality of their whole life where they have believed in God and then been with Jesus and seen what he's done the past 3 years. They need to trust what they know is fact. In our house, we have, and like probably most of your houses, you have ceiling fans. We're constantly walking under them without fear of getting hit by them. In our church, we have these beautiful pendant lights up here. And I'm sure none of you came in this morning wondering, okay, where do I sit so that one of these doesn't land on your head? It's because we know facts. We know that these ceiling fans and these pendants are doing what they're supposed to do. Move air, shine light, and stay on the ceiling. So Jesus then goes on to something in verse 2 that isn't translated very well into the English when he says, my Father's house has many rooms. Or in the King James Version, they use the word mansion. It doesn't say what I thought it said when growing up, or when the band Audio Adrenaline sings, my big, big house with lots and lots of rooms. If you know that song, you know that you've heard that many, many times. But it's not saying that. In the original language, it's which the book of John is written is Greek, and John uses the word mone, which actually is translated a dwelling place. Moreover, Jesus is then saying to them, my Father has a permanent dwelling place with lots of space. He's not just for the best or the elite like Moses or Elijah, or for Peter, James, and John, who are Jesus' favorite, but it's for all who believe. This permanent dwelling place is not a structure, it's something more. It is Jesus himself. It is the relationship we get for knowing him. Could we get a house or a mansion when we get to heaven? Maybe, but this passage doesn't say that. So is heaven any less of a place because of that? Obviously no, because heaven is going to be awesome. It's going to be way better than our finite minds can imagine of something like a mansion. So after Jesus tells them, my Father's house has many rooms, he says, if it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? See, I see this Jesus saying, have I lied to you in the last 3 years? Why would I start now? So listen. He tells them that there are preparations that are needed so that they can come to that dwelling place. He has to leave, die, and rise from the dead. He's going to come back, and the best part is he's going to take us to that dwelling place because he wants us to be with him where he is. And thank goodness, because what would the reason for us to be here if we didn't have that hope? Now we get to the confusing parts for the disciples, and for myself, if I were there, when Jesus says, you know the way to the place where I'm going. Then Thomas says something that I can relate to. He says, Lord, we do not know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Something to know about myself is I like to know where I'm going, especially if it's a new place. I like looking at maps, finding out the best route and the best way to go to where I need to go. I don't know if many of you have used Google Maps before, where you can type in where you want to go and you can get the directions, and you can zoom in and zoom out, and you can, on the side there's the little man, you can click and drag and you can drop on the road you want to go to, and it's in the first person view. Well, my mind kind of works that way. I can take the information looking at a map and I can retain it in my head and remember that. Even so, more so that when Julie and I are going for a drive somewhere in San Antonio or wherever, and there's construction or we take a wrong turn, I'm pretty good at figuring out the surrounding area and how to get back to where I'm going. Now, if it's a totally new place, like I said, I want a map. I want to know where I'm going, so much so that it doesn't bother me at all to stop at the gas station or see someone on the side of the road and stop and ask them, hey, how do I get here? Because I don't like not knowing. And that is what Thomas is asking here. And he's not ashamed to ask Jesus for more information. He's not embarrassed that he doesn't understand, and he asks Jesus, what are you talking about? And I'm sure if I was there, I would have said something like this. I would have said, Peter just earlier asked you where you're going, and you told him that he couldn't go with you right now. Come on, Jesus, make up your mind. We want to know the way. Please just tell us where you are going. Thankfully, that's not Thomas's response, and he's a little bit nicer to Jesus. But Thomas, he wants that physical map. He wants specific directions. And what Jesus tells him next encompasses, what Jesus tells him next in verse 6, encompasses everything that John is trying to say in this whole book. Jesus is telling Thomas and the rest of the disciples, they already have the way. He does not say, I have a way. He says, I am the way. He is the map. So I don't know about you, but when I go to Walmart or H-E-B and I'm trying to find something and ask someone where it is, they always just get me to follow them. And I don't like that. I asked them where it was, but I didn't ask them, please take me to where it is. But I always find what I'm looking for because they take me there so there's no confusion, that I'm not mixed up. And if they can't find it, they'll usually find someone else that can find it for me. And it's the same with my kids. If I take them swimming, I'm not just going to stand on the side and say, okay, start swimming. Dive in, hey, tread water. You don't need a life jacket anymore. But I'm going to get in the water. I'm going to teach them how to tread water. I'm going to teach them how to swim, how to dive in. And it's the same way Jesus, he does not just tell them, he shows his disciples the way. And they're sitting with the way. They know the way. The word know that Jesus uses in verse 7, when he's talking about knowing God and himself, is not talking about the knowledge of a book. It's more than that. It's the word gnosko. It means personal experience. Back in 2000, I had a chance to go to Bible school in Germany. And during Christmas, we had 2 weeks off where we could go home or travel or do whatever we wanted. And I traveled for those 2 weeks. And I went to 11 different countries. 4 of them I only saw from the window of the train, but I still count them as the countries I went to. But I got to go to Budapest. I got a personal tour of the Parliament building. I went to Venice, went on a gondola ride through all the canals. I saw the Colosseum, the Vatican, the Sistine Chapel in Rome, the Eiffel Tower in Paris. I saw many different places and things. I could show you a picture of me trying to hold up the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I could tell you about the streets of Rome at night and the crazy people that we saw. But unless you go there, you cannot know it the way I have unless you have experienced it yourself. It's the same way as being parents. Before we were kids, our doctor even said, hey, go have coffee by yourselves. Go do things that you can before you have kids. Because once you have kids, you can't do those things anymore. And you think you know what it's going to be like. You think you know what it's like to have a child until you have the child. And your eyes are opened to the actual truth. You know what it's like to be a parent. In the same way, the disciples, they've spent 3 years with Jesus. They know him. They've not just heard what he has said and taught. They have seen the miracles that he has done and always giving God the glory. They have the way, and Jesus is preparing it for them by what will happen next when he dies and rises from the dead. Because he is the way, they can have the truth and the life. And again, Jesus does not say, I have a truth, but I am the truth. The Jewish people back then, and even now, believed that one day the Messiah would come and save them. They believed that he would come as a conquering king, and at that time, destroy the Romans and free them for them to be their own nation again. The disciples for 3 years now have been following this man whom they believed to be the Messiah. Now Jesus is telling them that he is leaving and going to die. Here's another fear for them, that they just cannot understand that this is going to happen. They probably thought to themselves, the Messiah, he can't die. He's supposed to save us, free us from the Romans. Now what do we do? The disciples did not know the truth you and I can see. That even after Jesus rose from the dead, Jesus found some of them fishing in Galilee, going back to what they knew before they knew the truth. accept the truth and believe it, because without the truth, we are lost. We can know the way, we can have a map, but if we do not follow it, we are lost. And in James 2:19 it says, "You believe there is one God? Good. Even the demons believe and shudder." The demons know the truth. They believe in God, and look where they are. It is what we do with the knowledge that can save us. Lastly, Jesus, he says, he is the life. The life that we can have back with God. The life that we lost because of the sin that separated us from God. This life does not start when we get to heaven. It starts when we choose him. We choose to follow his way, believe his truth, and his life. Thomas Kempis wrote a book called An Imitation of Christ, and I think he gets it right. He wrote this back in the 15th century. He wrote, "Follow me. I am the way and the truth and the life. Without the way, there is no going. Without the truth, there is no knowing. Without the life, there is no living. I am the way which you must follow, the truth which you must believe, the life which you must hope. I am the inviolable way, the infallible truth, the never-ending life. I am the straightest way, the sovereign truth, life true, life blessed, life uncreated." But how does this knowing the way, knowing the truth, and knowing the life take away the troubled heart of fear? Because Jesus is not saying, do not let your heart be troubled because nothing bad is going to happen. He's not saying that it's going to be an easy way for the disciples or for us. If we look at the disciples, we can see that. We don't know exactly what happened to them when they died, but we have a good idea from stories passed down through history. Some of them we're more certain of, and others we're not as much. And this is what I found. Peter, as Matt told us last week also, was crucified. He was crucified upside down because he didn't feel he was worthy to die the same way that Jesus did. Andrew was crucified also, but was tied and not nailed. And he preached for 2 days while he hung there until he died. James, the son of Zebedee, we are told in Acts 12, was put to death by Herod Agrippa. Thomas was killed by lance in Persia or India. Matthew was stabbed in the back in Ethiopia or staked to the ground and beheaded. James was thrown from the temple or a cliff, stoned, and finally had his head smashed in with a club. Philip was crucified in Egypt or impaled by a hook and hung upside down. Thaddeus, or the good Judas, was crucified in Turkey or Greece. Simon, some believe, went to England, but they do know he was crucified. Bartholomew was either beaten and crucified, skinned alive, or whipped to death. John, the author of this book, didn't die a martyr's death, but he died of old age in prison on the island of Patmos. Judas, on the other hand, could not accept the way, the truth, and the life. He chose to make his own way. He chose to betray Jesus. He did not know the truth. He chose to believe that Jesus was never coming back, that he killed the Messiah. And finally, he took his own life out of guilt and shame by hanging himself from a tree. He did not understand everything that Jesus had taught him the last 3 years. The rest of the disciples, they understood this and were willing to not choose their own way, truth and life. But they knew the way, the truth, and the life. Because they knew the way, the truth, and the life, they knew Jesus. They eventually knew the life and knew what would happen to them if they continued, but they chose it anyways. We may never see this kind of persecution here in our lifetime, but are we willing to live this life? The disciples were willing to give up their life because they knew who Jesus really was and is. They knew the hope that they had in Jesus, and what took their troubled hearts away. And because of that, they had to share it, even though it cost them their lives. So you may know the way, you may know the truth, you may know the life, but do you know him? I'm not just talking to those who don't know Jesus as their Savior, but to all of you. What fear do you have that's holding you back? What fear do you have that's not letting you live the life that Jesus wants for all of us? Should we not want to share the way, the truth, and the life to everyone we meet? Should we not want to share the hope we have and share that we no longer have troubled hearts? Let's pray. Lord, just pray that you would just help us to know you. Know that you are the way, the truth, and the life. I pray that because of that knowledge, that we would not be fearful, that we'd be able to trust you and know that it is your life that is going to be way better than ours. I pray that we'd just be able to share this truth that we know, this knowledge that we know,